Hello everybody, this is Eryberrie here. Sorry I've been away for so long. University officially starts again this Saturday the 5th, but I've got myself a bit of a head start, so I've been doing a bit of reading up and I'm so excited to do this year of uni. But in addition to that, it's been a year since I found out about the MEM1 diagnosis. It's been just over a year now, and I'd needed some time to reflect, but hey, whatever, I wasn't someone who scheduled their uploads or anything, because I can't always stick to a schedule because things change all the time, so I'd rather just do them when I can do them. The subject of today, now I don't know whether I'm going to make this a series, but I could call this Anecdotes with Eryberrie, or Eryberrie's Anecdotes, or something to that effect, because I was just reminiscing the other day, as I do sometimes, and I remember the time when I was 18 that I got stuck in London, so I thought this would be a good story. Now, this happened in 2002. I was 18. That was my neighbour. I was 18 at the time, and so I'm nearly 36, so it's almost half my life ago. Sorry if you hear any bumping about, that's my neighbours. When I was 18, I had a friend, I'm just going to call her T, I don't want to reveal anyone's details, and we had a male friend called P, and I won't, again, reveal his name. Basically, we all worked at the same place, and T and I worked in the same department. We became pretty good friends. She had a lovely white Vauxhall Corsa. I couldn't drive at that point, so whenever we needed to go anywhere, she would, she was quite happy to drive. One weekend, all three of us, we decided that we would go to London. I can drive now, but I will never drive to, let alone in London. It's manic. I would cause a huge pile up. I wouldn't know what I'm doing. She phoned me in the morning, said, "You all right for going to London today?" I was like, "Oh, right, okay." I knew we were going to do something, but we didn't know whether it was going to be London or somewhere else. We met up and everything. We drove, or she drove, and got some petrol, and I got some money out of an ATM. I think I took out 20 quid or something. I gave her £10 towards the petrol, as did P, and drove to London. Arrived in London at, I think, 1:20. Didn't find a parking spot until 2:20. What we decided to do then was go to one of the museums. Now, I can't remember what it was or where it was, but it was where they had so-called, I don't know, how can you, determine whether they're authentic relics from the Great Fire of London and things like that, and I found it kind of boring, really, because you just look at them and go, yeah, whatever, I'm more interested in like fossils and things like that. Then we left the museum and decided to go to Hyde Park. I don't know what it is about London, but usually whenever I go there, I go there a lot now for hospital appointments, but I nearly always get a headache every time I go there, and I had a migraine building just above my eyes the whole day, and I was craving a cup of tea and a hot dog. Now, I didn't have a huge amount of money to my name at this point. I was working a part-time job. I was living at home with my mum. I had taken about 20 quid out of my account. I'd given £10 to tea, and I'd already spent quite a bit of money on getting into this museum that I didn't even want to go in the first place. So when we went to Hyde Park, I decided that I would walk over to the hot dog stall, but I was £1 short on my on what it would cost to get a hot dog, so I went without. So went back to my friend's T. She was just chatting away with P. I think they were flirting. I'm not quite sure what was going on between them, and decided therefore that we would go. It was around 6 o'clock ish at this point, and or it may have been a bit earlier. We were talking about, getting out of London, but T ended up on the phone with a friend of hers who just moved to London. They were talking about moving in together. Sat in the car by Hyde Park for a long time before we finally got going. Now, this was at the time when people didn't have sat-navs and didn't have sat-navs on their phone or internet access on their phone. Well, some people probably did, but they were very expensive phones. We just had 3210s or whatever. She was reading an old-fashioned map to find her way out of London. And it took us, I'm not kidding, it took us hours to get on the right road out of London. We were all very hungry at this point, and I didn't know, what could happen. I mean, I could have gone to an ATM and got some more money, but there wasn't one near where Hyde Park was. And I didn't have a lot of money in my account. I think I only had something like £40 left in my account after I'd taken that 20 quid out. After we established we were on the right road, we were driving through a place called New Cross in South London. And then T says, oh, shall we stop somewhere and get something to eat? And I kind of didn't want to. I really could have done with a cup of tea. I could have done with finding an ATM and having something to eat. So we saw a pub there. And again, I don't want to reveal too much about, who it was or whatever. I don't even know if the pub's still there. But there was a pub there that T had apparently previously been to, saying, oh, they do food here. So she parked and we went in, and it turned out they weren't doing any food. Right. Now, this made me angry. T decided that she would have a pint of Guinness. She was driving, so of course I wasn't happy about that. And she started having a go at me saying, oh, it's still within limit and blah, blah, blah. Look, we were supposed to be driving home on the motorway out of London. I don't care even if 1 unit is the limit. You shouldn't be drinking at all when you're driving, especially when you're driving on dangerous roads. That's irresponsible. I was not happy with her. And our friend P was just letting her do it. She was a very strong personality, and P was quite passive, and I was, I suppose, quite defensive. Then they started talking to the locals, being quite friendly and everything. And they found out that there was a live band playing in another pub a couple of corners away. And they were saying, yeah, let's go and see a live band. And of course, my head was banging. It was getting on for nearly 9 o'clock at night. And I wasn't happy at all. And I said, look, we came for a day out. We didn't come for a night out. I want to go home. I'm tired. My head's banging and I'm hungry. And they said, well, we're going. And so I thought, well, they've decided that they're going to go to this place. I didn't know the name of the pub. So I asked the landlord if there was an ATM round the corner. At this point, I started to cry. I was panicking. He said, yes, there's one literally just a few paces down to the left when you leave the pub. So I went to the ATM, I took out £30, and I went back to the pub. And by the time I'd got there, my friends, so-called friends, had fucked off. They'd left the car, but I have no idea where they were going. And the people in the pub who told them about this live band had also gone. I asked people that were still there in the pub, did they know anything about this live band? Nobody knew where this live band was, so I couldn't actually go and find them. I didn't have a mobile phone of my own at the time, but T did. And I knew her number off the top of my head because the amount of times I phoned it from my landline. So I used the pub's phone and I tried to phone her number, and it wouldn't work, and it was going through to answer machine, and so I was leaving messages. I couldn't text her, obviously. I said, I really don't know what to do. And so they were saying to me, well, would you, can you get a train? Which is why I took the 30 quid out, because I thought if I get the train home. But then it actually happened to be that particular weekend was a weekend when the trains in that area were completely effed up. There was some accident or technical error, and there were so many cancellations. There were train replacement coaches, things were not working towards their normal timescale, and it wasn't known if at that point of night on a Saturday whether I'd be able to get a train out of London back to my hometown. So they said, well, there's a train replacement coach which would alight at a bus stop near where there was a Sainsbury quite close to there. And I had at one point walked over to the Sainsbury store to see if I could get a map to find out where the nearest stations were. And I found I couldn't talk. I was asking people for help and I just couldn't speak. I went back to the pub and I said, yes, I will go to the the bus stop and I will wait for this train replacement coach. So I stayed there for a little bit and I was given a free drink, a J2O. I then said, could I please have a cup of tea? I was really dying for a cup of tea, so I had that, and that was really, really nice. At that point, my headache was quite bad, but it was one of the situations where I really didn't give a shit about my headache. I just wanted to get home. And then at about 10:30, I walked over to where this bus stop was, and I was there from 5 to 11 at night till 25 past 11. No coach arrived. And I was a young teenage woman on my own in the middle of London, well, South London, unaccompanied. You know, I was really quite vulnerable, but I had a kind of determination going on. I will resolve this. I then walked back to the pub and it was shut. I then banged on the windows and the landlord let me in, and I said, the coach didn't arrive, I don't know what to do. And he had some friends there who ran a pub of their own a few streets away, and they said to me, they were so nice, they said to me, look, if you can't get a train, come over to our pub, this is the name of it, and we'll put you up in one of our rooms free of charge. And that was so nice of them. It was amazing. But then they said, no, we've got a wedding this weekend. Oh my God, we haven't got any room. I said, well, we'll find you something. But then his wife was like, no, we haven't got anywhere. So fair enough. The landlord said to me that I could try and phone my friend T again. Bear in mind, the car hadn't moved. They still hadn't gone away from there. I also walked around at some point of the night. I can't remember if it was before I went to the bus stop or not. I was trying to find this pub or try and listen for live music, and I was asking people, is there a live band playing local here? Nobody knew anything about it. I phoned my mum and she said, get a taxi. I don't care how much it costs. Just get a taxi. I will pay by cheque. My mum didn't have any cash on her, but she said she paid by cheque. And there was a taxi rank next to the pub, and I went over to them and they said, no, we want the money up front, which would be around £100 to get me home. And I said, I can't I said, my mum has said that, I said, look, I can give you 30 quid now, but otherwise I'd be overdrawn in the bank. And I said, my mum can give you the balance then. They still said no. In the end, after trying fruitlessly to get hold of tea, the landlord of the pub said that I could stay there that night, and he was the only person who was there. He was a man of about 55, a very short man. He had glasses with the like a necklace on them, so he could put them down. I slept in his bed, but he slept on a sofa a couple of rooms away, and I don't think I really had a huge amount of sleep. I think I slept about 4 hours, and then I woke up quite early, and then he woke up and he said to me, oh, you can go and shower if you want, but I didn't have any clean clothes or anything, so I didn't want to. I then made him a cup of tea because, you know, I was so grateful for what he did, and my mum was also very grateful for what he did. He gave me permission to use the home phone, and I phoned T's mobile, and she answered. She had gone home. And she said, where are you? And I said, I'm still in London. She said, and I said, where are you? And she went, at home. And I said, well, I don't know where you went last night. I just came back after going to the ATM and you were gone. I said, well, I thought you were going. And I said, yeah, but there were no trains. I tried to get a train replacement coach, didn't happen, so the landlord let me stay there. And she said to me, do you know what, Erin, you're bloody lucky. And I went, yeah, I know I am. You know, I was really not happy with her. I mean, she was over a decade older than me. She should have been more responsible. I mean, but then again, you know, I think looking back on it, the age I was, I coped with it the best that I could back then. I then said thank you and goodbye to the gentleman. I phoned my mum and I said, right, I'm going to have a look at the trains today and see if there's anything at all from London. I'd been to London only a couple of times in my life at that point, and I knew that a train from Waterloo East had a direct route to my home. The first thing I did was I left the pub. I walked over to the Sainsbury's ATM. I don't know why I went that far when there was one around the corner. And I got another £30 out, and the ATM let me have it, even though I didn't even have an overdraft. It put me overdrawn in the bank, but at least I had 60 quid just in case. I went to the taxi rank and first of all, I didn't go to the taxi rank. I went to the bus stop over the road, and when a bus stopped, I only had notes. I didn't have any change. And I said to the guy at Waterloo Station, I gave him a 10 quid, and he went, oh, he looked at the £10 and I went, I'm really sorry, I've got nothing smaller. And then he was going, oh, he was really making a big deal of it. And I said, I'm sorry, but this is all, I haven't got anything smaller. And he was again just going, oh. So I just got off the bus because I thought, flipping heck. I then went to the taxi rank and said, can somebody take me to Waterloo Station? And from New Cross to Waterloo, I think now it would cost around about 25 quid or something like that. But at the time, they only charged me a tenner, which was really good of them. I went to Waterloo Station, and then I had to go all the way through the station, all the way up to Waterloo East. Oh, but there's no trains going from Waterloo East. You have to go to London Cannon Street. But luckily, through the 4 platforms on Waterloo East, there were shuttle trains every 15 minutes taking people to Cannon Street free of charge. Boarded one of those, got to Cannon Street. Somebody at Cannon Street was going to my hometown because the trains were not running to schedule. People were trying to find, any kind of route they could home. And he was told to get onto a particular train. So I followed the guy on the train, got on there myself. I didn't even get a ticket. And when the conductor came around asking for tickets, I didn't have one. I said, I'm so sorry, I got stuck in London last night and I'm just coming home now. And he looked at me and he could see that, I didn't look right. This particular train didn't go all the way to my hometown, and I knew that it didn't. It went to a town about 20 miles away from my hometown, so that was the closest I could get to. So he actually charged me £7.10 for a ticket to that town. When I got there was no train to my hometown. There was, however, a train replacement coach, and this time I was going to make sure I was not going to miss it. I got myself a ticket because it was treated the same as if it were a train, so I got myself a ticket and I got onto the coach, and I finally got back into my hometown and got home at around 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, my boss at work was expecting me in that morning, or I was expected to have done the Sunday shift, but I couldn't. I was in London. And when my mum had told my boss what was going on and that it was the fault of T, why that happened, he was okay with it. And I told him what had happened afterwards. And needless to say, T and I were not friends again after that. Me and P, however, we kind of talked afterwards, but I was a bit annoyed with him about how passive he was and how he just went along with everything T said, and I think it's because he fancied her. He was a nice guy, but he was, he wasn't someone who stuck up for himself. He was a follower. I think T tried to be friendly with me again. I went to someone's leaving do not long after that, someone who was very, very popular at where we all worked, and it was a big pub and everything, and I went along and I was one of the first people there, and then T turned up with P and she called out to me, Erin, do you want a drink? And I went, no. I didn't say anything to her. She tried talking to me after that point. She ended up handing in a notice a little while later. She was going to go to London. That didn't happen. She ended up getting a job back. At one point, I went along there one day when I wasn't actually working just to fill in my timesheet. And for some reason, she just blurted out from behind the desk, Erin, why do you have such a fucking problem with me? And I hadn't even said a word to her. And I said there wasn't a problem, which there was, but I just was not talking to her. So it's not like she was talking to me and I wasn't listening. It was that I just wasn't engaging with her. So I think maybe looking back, I should have said, well, if someone leaves me in London, then I will have a bit of a problem with them. But that's basically the anecdote. How I got stuck in London and how I got back home. Pretty shitting myself. But I was so pleased to be home. And my mum actually wanted to send that man money. But of course it probably wouldn't have been a good idea to have sent cash in the post to a pub. Anybody could have picked it up. And I didn't get the guy's name or anything like that. But he did me such a huge favour that night. It was so kind. And the gentleman who said that I could have stayed in their pub if they had room free of charge, that was amazing. I was lucky. I was bloody lucky. T was right. I was lucky. But I don't, if somebody, if you go somewhere with somebody and you agree to do something and then the plans change and someone gets a little bit upset at the plans changing, you don't just suddenly go off and do your own thing and leave them to their own devices. And if I had a phone, maybe, she could have gone like, and called me or whichever. But the last memory I have is when I went to sleep that night, or when I actually went upstairs after the landlord really closed the place. It was around midnight, 1 o'clock, and I looked out the window and the car was still there. But I haven't spoken to this woman for a long time, and I don't think I ever will. But anyway, that's my anecdote. It was 17 and a half years ago that this happened, and I remember it well. I'm sure you can tell. Anyways, share your anecdotes below, please, if you've had anything similar, or what do you think of that story? Do you think I acted unreasonably? Do you think T was unreasonable? Do you think I'm being unreasonable now? Or whatever, but let me know. Thank you very much, little berries. Bye!